This is a function demo 1. So I'm going to, again, I always call the main. And in the main, I have a while statement. I just say while true. So it's going to do something over and over again. So I say call something called sum function. And again, you know I'm calling a function because it's got the two parentheses after it, with or without data. When you have those parentheses, it knows to call a function. It knows it's not a variable. So I'm going to call some functions. I'm going to do what that says first. And if it returns something, it's going to get stored in a variable that I called sum name. And then we just print it out. Some function returned the following name called sum name. Okay? So we'll just keep running forever until I kill it. Yeah, I close the window out. So let's look at the function I called sum function, right? It has an input. It says, what is your name? So whatever's in my name is whatever the user answered. It could be Steve, Bob, Jane. It depends on whatever the user answers. And so once we have that value, it returns or sends back the value in that variable. So it's whatever the user entered gets stored in there. Now the value in name will be Steve, Bob, Jane, whatever they entered. It'll return that to the calling statement. So here it runs this, and then on the left side of the equal signs is some name, which again will be, Steve, Bob, Jane, whatever we entered in subname. And then I will use that in this print statement where I put out some name return the following name, some name. So let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to run this. It says, what is your name? So we'll do Steve. And I hit enter. It says some function return the value Steve. What's your name? Bob. Okay, return the following name Bob. What's your name? Jane. Okay, and it sees it's getting all that data swapped back and forth. Let's move that over for a second. It's first time in, it's getting my name Steve. It returns Steve back over here, and then it sticks it in some name, prints that out. Prints out Steve. You return the name of Steve. But then because it's in a while statement, it goes up and calls the sum function again and then asks again, what's your name? That time I answered Bob. It returns Bob. That was stored in the name. It returns Bob, and Bob gets put over in sum name because that was what was returned from the sum name function. So, and it keeps doing it. Did it for Jane. Now, since I didn't put any way to stop the loop in here, the only way I'm going to be able to do the loop is I'm going to click the little close button. It says, do you want to kill the running? And I do. So one more demonstration here. Here's a function demo. It's a little bit slightly more complicated in that I define two functions. I define a function called sum function again, and then I have a function I define another function. Now, another function receives two data items. I called it funct first and funct last for function first name and function last name. I just made those up. There's nothing special about that. They're names that I decided to use. Okay, let's walk through this. So we still have main happens, then main gets called, again a while true statement. So it's going to repetitively call some function, expecting to get some data back from some function, and it'll be stored in some name. Now, and then of course it'll print some function return the following name, just like we did before, just in the last example. So let's go up to some function and see what it's doing. It's got two inputs. It's asking my first name. Forget the quit stuff. We're not going to do anything with the quit. I'll take that out. And so then it asks, what's your last name? Okay, and it puts that in a variable I called last name. I just made these names up, first name, last name. Now, I call another function. Again, there's an equal sign here. So that's a sign that when I call another function, it's going to return something, and it's going to get stored in a variable called full name. So another function is going to pass the value that's in first name, which will be whatever I enter when I answer that question, and the value of last name. Same thing, whatever I enter. Another function. So it's going to go down here. Now, remember, if I answer Steve for my first name, it's essentially going to send the value of Steve and then store it in this variable, func first. So it's passing the value of Steve from there to there. So it's almost like I'm saying func first equals Steve. If I answered Steve for first name up here, so it's always values, not variables. frankly, I could have used the same names here, first name and last name, instead of these different names, and I often do when I'm coding. I'm changing the variable names because I'm emphasizing that it's values that are passed, not variables. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind. You can't use func first anywhere else except in code within this function. It's only good for here. Okay, so I want to keep it going. So it's going to take these two pieces of data that get sent, the first name and last name, and it gets, again, func first equals whatever was in first name, func last equals whatever in last name. And now it's going to put these together. It's going to take the first name and it's going to append a space, and then it's going to append the last name. So if I entered Steve Perry, it'll say Steve space Perry, and it'll store that in func full name. And I return func full name. Well, this return goes back to the calling statement, whatever called another function. Well, that's up here. Up here called another function. It sent the values I entered. And now, so it takes the full name thing that I calculated here in another function. Return means send back. Sent back the full name, and I stored it just in a variable called full name here. And I return full name. Well, where do I return to? I return to whatever called sum function. And that's all the way down here. I called sum function. The return value goes in a sum name. Now, in this example, a little bit more complicated, the sum name is going to be equal to a full name that's used. Okay? So I'm going to do a run. I'm going to run this. What's your first name? First name is Steve. Last name is Perry. I run it. It says sum function returns Steve Perry. Good. What's my first name? I could be John Smith. Return the following name, Job Smith. So it's doing all that different stuff. Jane Jones. Okay. Oh, I messed up. I put Jane Jones in the whole thing. So this is going to be interesting. Jane Jones Smith. Look at that. It put it all together because it thinks my first name is Jane Jones. Okay, but that's okay. It appended all the text together. So when I want to end this again, I'll just close this to end that, and I'll kill the program. I hope this helps you if you're struggling with understanding this concept. Again, kept it simple to try to help you understand how data is getting swapped back and forth. Okay, let me know if you have any questions.